Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and today I would like to bring forth two heavy-hitting titans out of my collection. This is my Doug Ritter Hogue in Magna Cut and carbon fiber, and this is my Triple B Collaborations Manix 2 in the CPM 15V. These two knives out of my collection, I keep going forth between the two, trying to figure out what's actually better. I'm not gonna get into super crazy details about cutting performance and different like the treatment of the blade and the hardness and stuff like that. I'm gonna be mainly going over the use, how it is in hand, how it is day to day, versus the price. Obviously, Magna Cut, awesome blade material. We know that Hogue is doing amazing stuff with their heat treating process, bringing a lot of value per dollar, as is Spyderco. So here we have two knives, very large knives that function very similarly. They both have a lot of wow factor to them and bring a whole lot of value, honestly, to really anybody who's ever considering getting either one of these on the aftermarket. I know Hogue, I believe they are planning to bring out more of this, and Spyderco, I mean, they'd be stupid not to bring out more of this, because this is just absolutely wonderful. So while CPM 15V is, the new kid on the block, Magna Cut has a little bit more, has a larger voice behind it, in my opinion, only because it's been out for a little bit longer and has a handful of more examples out in the market for consumers like you and I. So just taking a look at both of these guys, let's look at the Doug Ritter Hogue first here. I absolutely hate the model name. I make fun of it every time. I call it like quadratic equation and a bunch of other weird stuff. It's just a weird name. I wish they came out with something, cool and catchy, because this is a design and a knife that's worth something memorable, because this is a very memorable knife, just not that name. So here we have just as much blade branding as you can find on a Spyderco. Have this crazy heavily milled out solid carbon fiber scales. This is one of the main wow factors to this knife, these scales, and just how amazing they are in hand. I think at the moment, Original Goat is finally putting out some aluminum scales. I can't with aluminum. I don't care for aluminum. I will not spend my money on aluminum stuff, anything. But if they're doing stuff in aluminum, eventually they're going to do stuff in titanium. So if you've been sitting with the idea of possibly getting a full-size Doug Ritter Hogue, and you want to be able to have some premium touches and have a little bit of freedom of customization, because that's one of the main differences between this example and this. With Spyderco, it's practically a cult following. You can do so many different things. I'm talking about like different, the ball cage itself, the back spacers, the liners. There are people in the aftermarket that manufacture scale designs to delete the scale, to delete the steel liners completely and make it even lighter weight, which is insane. What else? Of course, different clips, get different springs. The ball itself, there's like 5 or 6 different balls out there of different materials that they just have enthusiastic elements to them. Some people have mentioned that they give a different feel slightly to the knife overall when deploying. Maybe make a slightly different sound, possibly. That's another enthusiastic element too. But clearly looking at the two, there are a lot of big differences. This looks a little bit fancier, right? You know, it has the carbon fiber and heavily contoured. Like it looks fancy. It looks like it costs a lot. Versus this looks a little bit more rugged. And excuse the grime. It is brown G10, but I've been using it so much that it's browner than brown. It's pretty freaking dirty. Wet wipes at this point just can't do anything for it. I actually have to take it apart, scrub it, boil the scales, all that kind of stuff. Talking about taking things apart, both these guys are very easy to take apart. Super easy to maintain. And the lock and in which a consumer interacts with it is very similar. So while they're constructed in completely different ways, you know, this has, you know, Spyderco's patented ball lock. I believe it's patented. It's basically just freaking marble. This little plastic cage. You can get titanium ones manufactured by the Flytanium company, which is cool. It's basically a little ball that is held in there with one large coil spring. You can actually kind of see it in there. I wish I had a flashlight, but just taking my word for it, there's a very large spring in there that's constantly applying pressure. You can actually see the spring right there. I have more confidence in this lock than I do in the Axis crossbar style lock, only because within the first couple months of owning my unit, this Doug Ritter Hogue, I actually broke one of the Omega springs, and it sucked, right? I had to contact the customer service. They were friendly enough to send me a set, just a left and right Omega spring. I did request specifically if I can get 2 sets, because I don't want this to happen again, and for me not to be able to use, you know, I'll have to like put the knife away for a while. And I love rotating throughout all my knives. So if this has a sweet fresh edge on it and I bust an Omega spring, I'm not gonna wanna use this thing because the action's gonna suffer from that. Now, while the action isn't amazing right now, it's a lot better than it typically is. But me experiencing this knife at its, I wouldn't call it the pinnacle of its action, but I know it can definitely be smoother than that, so I can speak with confidence on the smoothness of that. This, right out of the box, and it's gotten even better and better and better. But this also had some little quirks about the action. The spring, in my opinion, was way too strong. It was just too much for its own good, and made the actual cage very uncomfortable to disengage and manipulate. It just wasn't really fun. So I took the advice of a wonderful viewer of the channel. He recommended for me to just snip like 1 or 2 rounds of the coil, and it's huge difference, absolutely huge difference in the action. It just feels absolutely premium. I could just do this all day. It's super comfortable, very clicky, very snappy, and there's no play, absolutely no play. And some people may say, well, what if the spring weakens over time? Yeah, the same thing can happen to the Omega springs. And you know what? I ran into an issue with the Omega springs before I did ever a regular little coil spring like that. So there are some of the give and takes right there. Talk about price. Something I probably should have mentioned early on. I don't remember exactly how much this cost when it was available, but it was around like $210. So it wasn't like super crazy value, but I believe it was well justified, definitely worth it. And you know, also more the reason why they sold so fast. And this was actually the second run that I got on, because you know, the first time I just didn't know about it, right? So that's another thing too, that some people just don't really share things, or people find out last minute, and people like me miss out, unfortunately. So You know, you may have not known that something like this exists, and all you know is just like the high vis orange one, or maybe even like the JG10. This comes in a mini also. That's another cool little thing. So maybe you didn't know that. This is as small as a Manix gets. There's actually an XL, so it's a little bit different there. So this is full size. They offer a mini, a little bit less, right? This, when it was available, is about 160 bucks. There is so much value to that. I personally paid significantly more because I did buy it on the aftermarket. I don't recommend doing that unless you are, you know, really wanting it. Like, you really have to want it to justify it. And me personally, I'm happy that I did. It did sting a little bit, but I'm very thankful to have this now in my collection, and I do plan to do a lot of upgrades and things like that. But by the time I upgrade this to something to match, you know, how this comes stock, I'm already gonna be spending way more because like a set of carbon fiber scales, let's say, I'm probably looking at 80 to 100 bucks, right? Which definitely puts you know, the value of this knife way over what this thing comes as is. And more than likely, those aftermarket carbon fiber scales will not have milling like this, will not have contouring like this, because really there aren't that many people that offer stuff like that. Sorry, my cat's on top of the fish tank. She loves sitting up there. I freaking hate it because one time she fished out one of the fish and this poor bastard was just flopping around on the floor. So, yeah. Getting back to the topic at hand. So there is a lot of this and that and the other, and you know, benefits, good stuff, not so good stuff. So I think pretty much talking about aesthetic is over at this point. Definitely the Doug Ritter takes the win for that with aesthetics. It just looks cleaner, looks classier, looks more of like a normal looking knife. And then this is a little bit more foreign looking. So, you know, if I were to hand these to a coworker or a family member, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's a really cool looking knife," and they see this and they're like, "What the hell is that?" You know, there's jimping everywhere. There's a giant hole in the handle here. There's like, it's different, right? To regular consumers and enthusiasts like you and I, this is typical Spyderco. This is the language that they speak, and you know, we understand that. But to a typical person, you know, this is a little bit weird. This is a little bit wacky, and this looks a little bit, you know, light, a little bit nicer, a little bit more refined. Even talking about the blade finish here. Here we have a little cloth here. Maybe might help if I wipe it a little bit. The finish on this is very cloudy as is, and I wish I had a slightly better quality camera. I have good lighting in here now, finally, but it is a very, very light stone washing, and in more natural light, you can actually see the belt satin finish on it, which at first I wasn't the biggest fan of. It felt like it was an unfinished product, but eventually I got used to it, and now I like it. And with the Doug Ritter, the stone washing in here is gorgeous. It is absolutely uniform. It's just very, very well executed, right? So while this looks like a fancy schmancy knife, it can definitely take a beating for sure. And the finish on this blade will definitely hide a lot of use for sure for years to come. So like I'm very confident when I carry these with me, and I can, you know, put them really through anything. Of course, I'm not going to, you know, be immature with these knives. Of course, I want to conduct myself in a proper way when I'm, you know, in public and things like that. But that's really it. That's all I really wanted to share with you guys. Hopefully you guys are able to take a little something away from this. I know unfortunately these two examples are no longer available anymore, but their base models do exist. And if these are this good, I can confidently say that those probably hold a lot of value too, especially if you're really trying to scratch that itch right now. I honestly don't know when Hogue is going to come out with another run of these. But you know what? They have plenty of their base ones in 20 CV. I heard that they have a stellar heat treat on those guys, and they have a multitude of handle colors. I think they have like blue, red, orange. I think there's even like this like Damascus, like G10 Damascus, like purple, black. It looked really cool. That might only be on the small one. I'm not 100% sure, but you get a lot of different pops of color with that. With the Spyderco Manix, everything is really available in sprint runs. You don't really get anything fancier than S30V with you know, a satin finish or all blacked out DLC and black G10. So, but the prices are pretty darn close between the two. If you don't really care to get you know, sprint runs, like, because these are essentially sprint runs, if you don't really care for those and you just want to know like which one is better than the other, it really just does come down to visuals. So I mean, me personally, I love how the Doug Ritter Hogue looks, and the Manix is freaking sweet, but this is definitely a little bit more of a refined item here. This not so much. It's definitely gonna be for harder use. So take that with how it is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little video and have a wonderful day.